Welcome to Clinical Data Talks, a podcast brought to you by CRS Cube. I'm your host, Sylvain Berthelot. Join me and industry experts as we discuss the latest trends impacting the world of clinical data. Today, we're going to talk about the implementation and the capture of clinical data in early phase units, and specifically how to do it paper-free. I have a great guest for this discussion, as he led the implementation of technology for Spaulding Clinical from the ground up. He's now Chief Operations Officer at Spaulding and also a fellow podcast host in his spare time. It's a great pleasure to welcome Joe Erato to the podcast. Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Sylvain.
Oh, my pleasure. I actually really like writing those those introductions.
It makes me feel all warm.
Yes. So I'm quite interested in your experience with clinical technology, and especially knowing that you come from the early phase unit side of clinical technology, because there's kind of a gap between early phase and the later phases. Mm-hmm. And when we first discussed this topic, you shared with me that from the start you had an objective to do it paper-free. Could you tell me why you had this objective in mind?
Sure. So I'm from Spaulding Clinical Research, and when we were founded, the idea of the purpose of our founding was essentially to take clinical research into the next generation using technology. So in 2017, when we started the business, or 2007, 2007 when we started the business, a lot of the phase one units were still paper-based. Meanwhile, all of our healthcare systems were going to EMR, electronic medical record, and it's a better way of doing things. Using computers reduces human error, increases safety for participants. So we looked at it as an opportunity to break into the space as a brand new phase one unit and really make a difference for the industry. Mm-hmm. I would say we had the advantage of a lot of our founding members not being in the space originally, because it can be very difficult to do something the same way you've done it forever and then try and change to something new. I say we have the advantage of not being stuck in the old way of doing things on paper and going into it really fresh and trying to build something new from scratch.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think it's more difficult if someone's already in the industry to change the way of doing things?
With what I know now, yes, absolutely. I would say it'd be very difficult if you're an existing phase one unit that's been operating under your SOPs or your SOGs the entire time, because the entire unit is based around paper. The staff are trained on paper. And then when you drop in an entire new system, even if it's a new paper-based system, it's going to take a lot of time to learn. But when you bring in an electronic system, you're changing almost everything about your operation, how you collect the data, how you schedule your employees. Everything you need to do essentially switches. And even if your staff is all on board, everybody's ready to make the change, it's still really hard to do. There's still learning curves. There's still going to be mistakes and errors. And when you're trying to run studies continuously throughout the year, there's not really a lot of time. And there's a lot of risk involved in who's going to be the first study that you've implemented your new process on that you don't want to screw up. And what customer is going to essentially go for that. It's a very slow to change industry, because there's a lot of people who are very nervous about making changes and screwing up data for customers, or screwing up the study that they're working on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So thinking about when you first started and you were leading this implementation of technology for Spaulding Clinical, did you find it easy or hard to do this implementation, especially to go paper-free, essentially?
It was very difficult. Even though we weren't paper to begin with, you really don't know what you don't know until you figure it out. And that essentially is when you're operating in a study. Luckily, our plan was to do an initial study that we self-funded. We did a study where we compared moxifloxacin. We did basically a mock through a QT, but different doses of moxifloxacin to show that we could catch a signal and prove to customers, hey, we're a brand new phase 1 unit, but we are capable of running a study. And we learned a lot in execution of that first study during the dosing, how we had to coordinate our staff for dosing, how we had to coordinate our staff for blood draws, because instead of just writing things on a piece of paper, you're now scanning barcodes, verifying, then you're signing off on the electronic record, and you're making sure it gets into that database. And unlike on paper, it's readily available to our customers live. So we'd have our customers logged into the system, essentially watching dosing, watching blood draws as our team's collecting data on the bedside. So there was obviously we had a big penchant for making sure that we caught anything as it was happening. It was very scary to us that maybe there'd be a late draw and our customer or the monitor might even recognize it before our floor staff does if they're watching that event. So we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to really ensure we're collecting that data the best we can right at the bedside. And if we did see any issues come up, because it does happen, when you're drawing blood, you can blow a vein, or if somebody's having nausea and they're not able to swallow a pill, those are real life human reactions that occur during a study. So we wanted to make sure we're in the system commenting on any type of deviation right away to make sure that if our customers are watching that data, they're seeing that we're on top of this and it's not something they're going to discover later. I'd say one of the benefits outside of paper is if there's a deviation or there's things that would fall outside of the protocol window because of something out of our control, someone's sneezing during an ECG or someone's vomiting when they're supposed to be taking the pill, we're dealing with those right away. Versus on a paper source, you might have to wait for a monitor to be physically on site. Then they're going to be in some closet somewhere looking through all the paper source documents, and then they see a deviation, they have questions on it. Well, now it's 2 weeks later, and we're going to have to go find that employee and say, hey, remember 2 weeks ago when you did this one blood draw? I know you've done about 1,000 cents, but this particular one, you were 3 minutes late, and you wrote, the vein was blown. Can you give me more information on that? How accurate is that data going to be? There's a lot of clinical practitioners that have good memories and might actually remember that specific event. But when you're doing it electronic at the bedside, if you're late and you're clicking the button, and this is just one example, because we're programming in all those deviations and what to do if you deviate per the protocol right in the system, when they miss that time point, they're going to be prompted on the screen with essentially how they need to document it, what they need to do next. Hey, if you miss this blood draw, you're supposed to do X, Y, Z. And the system's allowing them to essentially follow the protocol without having to remember it. We're always trained on the protocol, but there's a lot of information for a clinical technician or a nurse to remember on the studies they're working on. Having an electronic system really is an advantage by allowing you to follow those protocols to a T without having to necessarily remember it just because it's programmed right in the system.
Just hearing you talk, what I find extremely interesting is that you're talking about patients. You're talking about events that happen on a daily basis, I can imagine, like blood draws, for example, or taking a pill. So you seem a lot closer to patients than maybe, I'll talk about myself. Like I'm at an e-clinical vendor, and for me, I don't necessarily see patients. I don't necessarily hear about patients or what happens at the site. So you seem much closer to the operations than others in later phases.
Yes.
And did that help you actually to decide on what systems to implement?
If I'm being honest, it wasn't one of the initial factors. But once you start operating, and again, our team, when we started Spaulding, a lot of the team hadn't been in early phase. We've been in other technologies. I worked in a hospital. So I came in on a lower level operations to help run the floor because it's very similar to, it's a medical environment, essentially. It's very similar. You're making sure blood draws are happening, ECGs are happening, blood pressures are happening, much like you do in a hospital. It's just more timed. Yeah. What I realized was if we don't focus on the individual that's there volunteering their time and their body to help further science, and it's just treating them like cattle, it doesn't work well because you need them to be compliant and follow the study. And if they don't feel like they're being cared for or they matter, they're not going to be very compliant with the study. So one of the things we did, and this doesn't necessarily fall into the category of what's different between paper and electronic systems, but with an electronic system, what we noticed was it's a lot less chaotic. And my only comparison is when we started the company, we had the ability to visit a lot of other phase 1 sites. I had the opportunity to watch dosing days at other phase 1 sites. And in a paper-based system, there's people filling stuff out, throwing stuff at, like trying to organize a lot of paper. I said it almost felt like early New York Stock Exchange, where people are just holding tickets and throwing information around. And it's kind of terrifying, like to understand of how are you keeping this all organized? And what you realize is they have to go kind of in on the back end and clean up all of the mess from the chaotic day. When we came to our site then with the electronic system fully implemented, it was a lot less chaotic. We didn't have centralized dosing areas. We're actually doing it at the bedside in the room. We'd bring computers into by the person. So they're more, we're not shuffling them in and out of rooms and like kind of yelling at them like, hurry up and go here for this, hurry up and go here for this. It's no, we're going to come to you. You're the person, you're the focus. We're catering essentially to them to make sure they're comfortable, they're in a good state. And then our staff is moving fluidly through the unit, bedside to bedside with our system. We're doing our verifications electronically. Again, the electronic system is helping guide our staff through the protocol. So it's less relying on humans to remember what needs to be done in the study and more, okay, you're a medical practitioner, you're a blood drawer. What you're good at is drawing blood. That's what we need you to be top tier at. We don't need you to memorize every detail of the protocol. That's what this electronic system is going to do for you.
So how did you do the implementation? Did you use external vendors for the systems you use, or did you build it yourself?
That's a two-part answer, because when we originally started, we did use external vendors. So we had obviously external vendors for our telemetry system, which was the Mortera surveyor system. We used GE blood pressure cuffs. And then what we had to do is find a clinical trial management software that was able to integrate with those systems. Big thing for us was making sure we removed as much of the human data entry as possible. So if a blood pressure is taken by a machine, that machine should put the data right into the system. If we're sending out safety labs, those safety lab results should go right into the system, not send me a fax or an email, then I have to have somebody typing it in. That's where a lot of errors can come into play. The biggest hurdle for us was there was no integration for telemetry. And if you're doing QT studies, that's the main data point that's being collected, which takes the most time to enter into a system. So we used, originally it was called AlphaDOS. It was made by Logos Technologies. And then we had in-house, an in-house IT guy, essentially. He would kill me if he heard me call him an IT guy. But he developed a proprietary integration between our telemetry system, our lab, and AlphaDOS. So we built our own system and validated it for automatically capturing ECGs at the protocol time point, and then importing all of those data points directly into the electronic system. So we didn't need to print any paper ECGs. We didn't have to have anybody physically overread something. The Mortera surveyor system had all the components to have cardiologists do the measurements with the calipers, do the overreading, and then we just built the connection or the bridge between the systems that allowed them to, watch on the telemetry system when time points were coming up, so that we knew that they were laying steady during their collection point. And then when it was captured, it would automatically send it to the cardiologists. As soon as they overread it, it would come right back into the system. So we didn't have any lag or delay. I think on our first study, just to kind of prove that this worked in real time, we had all of our cardiologists live reading ECGs as they were being collected. So by the end of our first day, where we had a dosing day with heavy ECG collection, by 8 or 9 o'clock at night, we had 100% of the ECGs overread in the system already completed. And that was huge, obviously, because as we continue to do that through the study, we're able to get top line results in only a couple weeks, where it used to take months because you're not waiting for all this data collection, the data entry. We're doing the data cleaning, review, edit checks, queries, all real time. so that by the time at the end of the study you have last subject, last visit, 95 to 98% of the study has been queried, checked, overread, and is ready to go. So all of those timelines for database lock, top line results, all that stuff that takes months after the last subject, last visit really only took several weeks for us to complete.
That's amazing. And that's direct impact for the study team, because what they care about at the end of the day is being able to analyze the data to then make decisions on next phases, submit it, and so on.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And if you imagine on like a SAD MAD study where you're doing safety review to determine your next cohort's dose, when we started this, the typical buffer was you'd have your cohort check in, and when they were done, you need a week for safety review, and then you'd make your decision on your second cohort.
Yeah.
With our data available real time, many times those decisions were able to be made during the first cohort while they're still in house, so that we would actually be able to back up if we ended up doing 3 cohorts with no delay. So by the time the first cohort checked out, there might even be an overlap where the second cohort's already checking in. And if you can save somebody a month or 2 months of time on their decision making for their other clinical projects, that's huge. That saves them a ton of money, puts them ahead of schedule. Smaller companies, their investors really like that because saving time and money. And that's something that, I'm not going to give away any secret sauce, but just by simply automating and bringing current technology into clinical research is what allowed that to happen.
And you talked about barcode scanning at the very beginning. Is that something you use a lot throughout the unit?
Absolutely. Obviously, the biggest thing that can go wrong in the clinical study is if you dose somebody the wrong dose, or you do the wrong procedure on somebody that they're not supposed to get. And outside of, we kind of go over the top at Spaulding. So everything is barcoded. So if Sylvain, if you're checking into a study, when you come in here, you're going to have your picture taken. It's going to be in the system. You're also going to be given your own barcode on your wrist that will scan. So it pulls you up in our system. We can see your face. And then we actually even audibly say, tell me your date of birth and your initials every single time for every time point, just to verify that we have the right person, right time point. And then on top of that, if it's a plus 2 hour blood draw for you, all of our blood draw tubes are barcoded with the right time point. So we'll have to scan you, and then your next event will pop up and we'll have a little countdown saying, hey, there's 2 or 3 minutes into your blood draw. And then I have to then scan the tube, and the system will alert me if it's the wrong tube. So if I accidentally picked up the 3 hour blood draw tube and I scan it, a big display is going to pop up with a thing saying, hey, you have the wrong time point. This isn't that. And I can visually see on the tube, oh my gosh, I grabbed the wrong one, put it back. And then I have to scan the right one before it will allow me to collect the data point. So again, electronic systems are going to help us from making human errors that people make. No matter how good you are at your job, you're going to eventually make an error, because that's what happens. So the systems reduce that. Whereas if I'm on paper and I grab that tube and fill it, it might not get caught until we see the PK report, and there's this weird spike where it kind of goes up where it should have gone up earlier. And now it's word of mouth. I'm gonna have to go talk to you like, hey, did you grab the wrong tube? Well, no, my job's on the line. I definitely didn't grab the wrong. I never grabbed the wrong tube. I've heard stories of people that were paper-based, and they say, we've never missed a PK time point ever. We're always on time. And as soon as they implement an electronic system, they're at like 70%. It's like, oh, so you were just essentially, I'm not going to accuse anyone of it, but if you're consistently late on your blood draws and you could lose your job and you're writing it on paper, it's really easy to say you didn't miss the time point. You can just write in the correct time. Whereas our system, if you scan it and hit enter and it's not the right time, it's going to alert you and ask for a comment as to why it was late. And you have to put in the narrative as to explain what happened.
I can't stop thinking, well, it would be amazing if we could do exactly the same in phase 2 or 3. So have you looked into that? Like, do you think it's possible to implement this level of automation for phase 2, 3?
Absolutely. I think I don't like using the word easy, because none of this is easy. Everyone would be doing it. But there's a lot less rigor in later phase studies as far as timing goes. So there's no reason why you can't implement an electronic system to collect all of the data for a late phase study. I would say the hard part would be you're working with less control, meaning if you have multiple sites, you're dealing with multiple personalities at these sites, staff with different levels of training. So that really the impetus would be on the system being incredibly easy to use and easy to adopt.
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, there's almost got to be less rigor in the collection and more rigor in like the CRO that is managing all the sites. And there's I think a lot of work there in probably helping doctors' offices or sites that are running the study with technology issues. There's going to be a lot of that you see at any workplace, forgetting passwords, not knowing how to click on something. So I think the burden of making it work would be on the CRO to almost be like a customer service organization at that point.
Yeah.
Manage all the technical glitches and issues that would occur at all the different sites. But if you're a good CRO, we have several good partners that know how to work with the systems we use. And if you have good relationships and you have people that are willing to really dive in and use the technology, once you get over that initial hump, I think the benefits are staggering compared to trying to manage it all manually on paper and collect it in a single area and then enter it all in a database.
Yeah. What I'm wondering now is, like, obviously you've done it and it's a well-oiled machine. But now I'm thinking, which sponsor is going to take the risk of working with potentially different barcode scanning systems that all need to integrate with an e-source system or an EDC, not knowing if it's actually going to work. So I can imagine that it could be a big headache, and instead of making things better, it would make things worse potentially. So you'd have to come with a well-oiled machine like you have to make it appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, I think it's the amount of control you have. And once you get later, you're relinquishing a ton of control to the other sites. So it might be, you might not be able to do more of the barcode scanning unless, as a CRO, you're willing to ship out, wristband printers, barcode scanners. You're shipping out. I think of it much like how a core lab would work for late phase studies, where you have to ship out the equipment and then hold trainings on how to use it. And then they're going to screw it up. They're not going to know how to use it. You're going to have a 24/7 call line, especially if it's a global study, to help troubleshoot things like, hey, I can't turn this on. Oh, did you plug it in and charge it? Oh, no, I left it on the charger all night. Okay, now you're going to have to charge it for at least an hour. So you kind of turn into more of an IT organization than a CRO. But again, it's even with the phase one, it's almost like you're front loading a lot of the burden and work, so that when you hit play and you execute that study, the study itself runs a lot more smoothly. Versus in the old method, maybe the work setting it up is relatively simple because you just got to print all the source documents and get it all ready, and the chaos happens in the study, and then the chaos happens after the study. I would much rather have a lot of the work done up front and then have it, I won't say coast through the study, but when you hit play and you execute, it's a lot smoother. And you're able to really act on deviations a lot easier because all the chaos is happening during the study.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I have one last question for you, Joe, which I love asking everyone who comes on the podcast. What's the best piece of advice you've received that you consistently apply to your work?
I won't say I've consistently applied it because that'd be a lie, but by doing it wrong, I've learned that this is probably the best way. It's minimizing distractions from your intended goal, because there's a ton of distractions, especially when you're building a business. And I don't want to make it feel like it was just me. I was younger, but I was on a big team of people that were all heading in the same direction. And the more we minimize distraction, and the more focused we were on our intended goal, the better the results were. So it was minimizing distraction and then just keeping passion and consistency through the hard times. Like, that's really, like, you're gonna encounter really difficult times where everything seems like it's falling apart and not working. But again, if you cannot get distracted by the shiny objects and just stay on your mission and your purpose, you can get through it.
Yeah, nice. As you were saying that, I couldn't stop looking at your drum kit, which is a nice and shiny distraction right in your room. So I wonder how often that becomes too much of a distraction for you.
It's not too bad. It's more of, it helps get a lot of the energy out that I might need to get out after a long day. So it helps
Yeah.
me more sane.
Yes. Yeah. I get that. I get that. Well, Joe, thanks a lot for your time. I absolutely love what you've been telling us today, because it's interesting, like you said, it's how much control you have, and in an early phase unit you have much more control than in later phases, but still you have to put all this energy up front to make it a smoother operation as you get studies. So it's very interesting. Hopefully one day I'll be able to visit it, because I'd love to see it, how it works.
Yep, it's most people don't understand it until they physically come to our site and they have kind of that aha moment of like, okay, I get it now, because we do things very differently. But no, I appreciate you having me on, Sylvain, and this was a lot of fun. So thank you.
No, thank you, and thanks everyone for watching us or listening to us today. We've got more episodes of the podcast on our website.